How you doing?
When WWE transitioned to a PG rating in the summer of '08, audiences worried about how the quality of the product would change. After all, wrestling is, by definition, a violence-based form of entertainment, and fans worried how WWE would function without the over-the-top violence, blood, or obscene language. With that said, WWE has been PG for 14 years, but has also slipped in some very un-PG moments during that time. Join us now as we look at 21 non-PG moments that somehow made it to WWE TV. Number 21. Missionary Position. As the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns has been able to hold his own in the ring and on the mic, a lesson John Cena learned firsthand in 2021. Returning at that year's Money in the Bank, Cena used his same old catchphrases and insults, which didn't impress the head of the table. In an infamous in-ring promo, Reigns spoke about how Cena is recycling the same old material, saying John is like missionary position every single night. Mere weeks later, Cena and Reigns would meet face-to-face on SmackDown, where the Universal Champion referenced Nikki Bella, who Cena had proposed to at WrestleMania 33 in 2017, only to later break off the engagement. With how squeaky clean WWE is, referencing the well-known sexual position and Cena's doomed relationship caught fans off guard and showed that this is a much different Roman Reigns to the big dog fans once knew. Number 20. Scarlett Bordeaux's Very Big, Very Real Pair. When Johnny Gargano wasn't happy with NXT General Manager William Regal, the leader of The Way decided to confront the British veteran in his office. Storming in unannounced, The Way had no idea that Regal was having a meeting with Scarlett at the time, leading to an incredibly non-PG moment. Gargano's focus was on Regal, but Austin Theory couldn't take his eyes off of Scarlett, making a series of suggestive comments that seemed to apply to a certain part of her body. Saying that they were big and asking if they're real, the punchline was that Theory was looking at Scarlett's nails and not the part of her that countless fans were no doubt fixated on. Number 19. Loomis brings the condoms. Not satisfied with The Way being involved in one non-PG angle, the group led by Johnny Gargano had a second scandalous segment in 2021. That year, Gargano had feuded with Dexter Loomis, who had won the heart of The Way's Indy Hartwell, and the happy couple were married on the pilot episode of NXT 2.0. After marrying, the pair were joined by Gargano and Candice LeRae on their honeymoon, and Gargano wanted to make sure that the newlyweds did not get up to anything too risque. Sneaking into their hotel room, Gargano wasn't pleased to find the many condoms Loomis had bought, and hearing the door open, hid in the room's closet. The former NXT champion had to listen on to Hartwell's loud moans and bouncing on the bed, not knowing that the couple were having a pillow fight and nothing more. It was pretty unbelievable that WWE allowed condoms on their PG show, but the segment wasn't just non-PG, but one of the funniest things the company had produced in quite some time. Number 18. Charlie Caruso likes DP. It isn't just the wrestlers who gave fans non-PG moments during the PG era, as Charlie Caruso found out during an episode of Raw Talk. During a February 2021 episode, those on the show discussed a nickname for Damian Priest, and Caruso said she liked the term DP. Blissfully unaware of the term's other meanings, Caruso said that DP had a nice ring to it, as R-Truth couldn't help but watch on. Truth eventually chimed up, saying that his broadcast partner gets confused sometimes, and we can't help but wonder what Priest, who was on the show at the time, felt about his doomed nickname. 17. The Fiend's Head. The emergence of The Fiend in 2019 was a welcome surprise to fans and had audiences hanging on everything he said. With his scary clown aesthetic and creepy music, fans immediately got on board with the dark character. At SummerSlam that year, The Fiend had his first official match and walked to the ring with a horrific-looking lantern. Seemingly carved out of the head of The Fiend's alter ego Bray Wyatt, the monstrous creation featured Wyatt's eyes sewn shut and his jaw dislocated to allow for the light to emanate. WWE did receive some complaints that the severed head lantern was not appropriate for younger fans to see and that the company went too far, but those complaints didn't stop WWE selling replicas of the lantern. In the Attitude Era, Al Snow had walked to the ring with a mannequin's head, but it was in the PG era that fans saw this much more gruesome decapitation. Number 16. Making the Man. Not all PG moments have been bad for WWE, and in 2018, a very non-PG incident became one of the most important parts of the show. During an invasion of Raw, setting up that year's Survivor Series, Nia Jax broke Becky Lynch's nose with a punch, leaving the Irish superstar with the proverbial crimson mask. Despite the injury, Lynch continued with the segment, and the image of her bloodied self, standing tall in the crowd, was an instant hit with the fans. WWE had begun turning Lynch into a more serious character, but it took her face being covered in blood to propel the man to the next level of superstardom. Number 15. Orton flips the bird. Heading into WrestleMania 31 in 2015, Randy Orton was feuding with Seth Rollins after the Viper turned face, having split from the Authority. Prior to Orton's face turn, the Authority tried to get the two on the same page, booking them in a handicap match against Roman Reigns on the March 9th Raw, but the two didn't get along. At one point in the match, Rollins went to make the tag, but Orton didn't just refuse, but flipped off the then Money in the Bank holder in the process. Reigns would go on to win the match, but with Orton's outstretched fingers being blurred on the live broadcast and edited out of subsequent replays, it didn't appear WWE appreciated Orton's hand gestures. Number 14. Eva Marie almost bears all. While countless fans may yearn for the return of the Attitude Era, it's safe to say that WWE's women are treated with far more respect these days. Before the women's revolution, most women were hired solely on their looks rather than their wrestling ability. One woman hired before the revolution was Eva Marie, who was hired for her looks in 2013, and got a lot of flack from fans for her poor in-ring work. In 2016, however, WWE had an angle featuring Eva Marie in which the Total Divas star had a wardrobe malfunction in the ring, with her top nearly coming off. A gallant referee produced a towel to protect Eva's modesty, and the angle was planned to get Marie over as a cowardly heel who wanted nothing less than to wrestle. In an interview, Marie called the malfunction every woman's worst nightmare, but with the segment earning 3.5 million views on YouTube in just 24 hours, the non-PG angle did very well for WWE. 13. SmackDown is really into what? Before the PG era began, SmackDown was synonymous with the giant fist stage that the Blue brand used from 2001 to 2008. The Big Fist stage has remained popular with fans, and it was during a Talking Smack episode that Daniel Bryan had a very un-PG take. Speaking to Renee Young, Bryan recalled the set and said that SmackDown was really into fisting. The line did not go unnoticed by Young, who gave an expression we imagine a lot of people had when hearing the line. We are pretty confident that this was an intentional line by Bryan, who must have enjoyed having a very un-PG line on Talking Smack. Number 12. Thumbtacks. Thumbtacks have been a staple in wrestling for decades, but when WWE brought in the PG rating, they were swiftly banned by the company. That ban lasted for 8 long years until they were brought back in 2016 as part of the Chris Jericho vs. Dean Ambrose Asylum match at that year's Extreme Rules. The pair of future AEW World Champions reportedly had to fight hard backstage to get Vince McMahon's approval for tacks to be used, but did so only on the condition that it was Jericho who landed in the tacks. McMahon's reasoning was that since Jericho was the heel, he had to receive what was arguably going to be the most painful part of the bout. Sure enough, when Jericho went for the codebreaker, Ambrose countered and sent the Canadian veteran into the tacks, and it was Dean who'd pick up the win in this very non-PG match. Number 11. Triple H loves Eve's pearl necklace. Earlier, we covered the very un-PG interaction between Austin Theory and Scarlett in NXT, which relied heavily on double entendres. Well, it turns out that this wasn't the first time WWE had used this kind of joke, as years earlier, a similar segment played out with Triple H and Eve Torres. Triple H was being interviewed by Eve, who had yet to become a fully fledged wrestler, and the game asked if those were real and pointed to her chest. Adding that they're magnificent, the multi-time WWE champion later clarified that he was talking about Eve's pearl necklace. What makes this all the more shocking is that this was just months after WWE began the PG era, as the company clearly had some struggles moving on from the sort of the comedy that they've previously allowed. Number 10. Vince breaks his own rule. If a WWE superstar breaches WWE's PG rating, odds are they'd have to answer to Vince McMahon, but even McMahon has broken the PG rating. On the February 22, 2016 Raw, Shane McMahon made his long-awaited return to WWE, shocking every fan in the arena. As if the return of Shane wasn't shocking enough, the prodigal son expressed his desire to take over WWE, blaming Vince, Stephanie, and Triple H for the low ratings. Vince said that Shane could take over WWE if he defeated The Undertaker at WrestleMania 32 in Hell in a Cell, and claimed that Shane was going to get a beating. WWE censored the line on TV, but the fans of the show heard the expletive used in full, as Shane's shocking return was even more shocking thanks to his father's verbiage. Number 9. Lashley attacks a child. At SummerSlam 2021, Bobby Lashley got one of the biggest wins of his career, defeating Goldberg in a physical match. Lashley's attack continued after the match was finished, however, prompting Bill's son Gage Goldberg to get in the ring, but was no match for the Almighty. What set this segment apart from other attacks is not only Gage not a wrestler, but at the time he was only 15 years old, making Lashley's beatdown an assault on a minor. Had this not been for a storyline, Lashley could have faced up to 5 years in prison, and WWE played the angle as if it was a shoot. MVP quickly grabbed the mic to say that Lashley had no idea that Goldberg's kid would attack him, implying that the hurt lock he applied was the then WWE champion's form of self-defense. For as dark as the Attitude Era got at times, the company never crossed the line of having a literal child be attacked for the show, but that was a line WWE willingly crossed in 2021. Number 8. Mandy Rose seduces Jimmy Uso. By 2019, WWE had reached over a decade of the PG era with no sign of the product's rating ever changing. WWE was also several years into their women's revolution, but decided to have a program with Mandy Rose that would have fit in during the Attitude Era. In an effort to ruin Naomi's life, Rose began flirting with the Glow's husband Jimmy Uso, sending him racy photos, and even wearing an Usos Day One-ish t-shirt. Rose even claimed that she had left her wrestling top in Uso's hotel room, and did have a segment in a hotel bedroom with the tag team specialist. Jimmy ultimately remained faithful to his real-life wife, but this sort of storyline had a lot of fans shocked with Rose's temptress ways. Number 7. Everything about Brock Lesnar. In 2012, Brock Lesnar re-signed with WWE after years of establishing himself as a legit tough guy in UFC. With Lesnar's real-life toughness, WWE wisely allowed Brock to push the PG rating when he appeared, even busting open John Cena in his first match back at Extreme Rules. Lesnar would also use brutal elbow strikes to bust open Randy Orton at SummerSlam 2016 and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 34, in a clear breach of WWE's established PG guidelines. Lesnar's choice of language also pushed WWE's rating, as while Paul Heyman has often spoke for him, Brock would often use profanity to make his own point. Perhaps the most infamous example of this was telling Heath Slater that he doesn't give a you-know-what about Heath's kids, as Brock Lesnar has always seemed to be immune from WWE's PG rating. Number 6. Chris Jericho goes too far. After returning to WWE in January 2012, Chris Jericho began feuding with then WWE champion CM Punk, culminating in a title match between the two at WrestleMania. Jericho's beef with Punk was that the Chicago-made star was claiming to be the best in the world, which Y2J thought was ripping off his own moniker as the best in the world at what he does. Not satisfied by calling Punk a copycat, Jericho took aim at Punk's family, bringing up Punk's father, an alcoholic, and Punk's sister, a drug addict. Jericho claimed that the straight-edge superstar was going to end up just like his family, but Punk was able to fight through these comments to win the WrestleMania match. Substance abuse is a serious matter, and given how many wrestlers, many of whom have gone through WWE, have had to deal with substance abuse problems, it was shocking to hear these comments by Jericho in 2012. Number 5. It's better to be pissed off. Jeff Hardy's career has always been attached to controversy, thanks to the charismatic Enigma's history of substance problems. In 2020, WWE decided to once again address Hardy's issues on screen as part of a feud with Sheamus, in which Hardy was arrested on screen for dangerous driving. On the June 12, 2020 SmackDown, Hardy was forced to take a urine test in the ring, but it was Jeff who would have the last laugh, throwing his sample at Sheamus in the middle of the ring. Holding an impressively full jar of urine, which we can only attribute to Hardy being well hydrated, Jeff borrowed a line from Shawn Michaels, who had to undergo a similar segment years earlier, saying it's better to be pissed off than pissed on. The segment was so shocking that it was later removed from broadcasts after complaints by Fox. Number 4. Alexa Bliss gets interrupted. Alexa Bliss is one of WWE's most beautiful superstars, and while her tenure in the company has come exclusively during the PG era, she has had one segment that pushed the rating. In January 2019, Bliss was set to introduce the new WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, but was rudely interrupted backstage before the segment could begin. A WWE official walked into Bliss's dressing room carrying a coffee for the former women's champion, and fans didn't expect to see Bliss half-dressed. To be fair to the official, he did knock twice and tell Bliss through the door that she was up next, and the flustered official quickly left after delivering her coffee. The response to the segment was mixed, as some thought the segment was crass. Dave Meltzer later explained in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that this was WWE's ways of testing the waters for edgier content, as it was certainly not expected on the PG product. Number 3. Eye for an Eye. In 2020, fresh off of losing a WWE title feud to Drew McIntyre, an irate Seth Rollins took his frustrations out on Rey Mysterio, jamming the former world champion into the steel steps eye first. What followed was weeks of speculation that Mysterio would have to retire, a concept Seth found hilarious, but instead of hanging up his mask, Rey faced off with Rollins at that year's Extreme Rules. In a bizarre decision given what Seth had already done to him, Rey challenged Rollins to an eye for an eye match, with the winner being whoever could remove the eye of their opponent. Rey would ultimately lose the match, and the image of his severed eye, freshly removed from its socket, turned the stomach of Seth as well as the WWE Universe. Of course, this wasn't really Rey's eye, but just a stunt for the show, but the fact that WWE allowed for the removal of a bodily organ during this time nevertheless shocked fans. Number 2. McIntyre and the Kendo Stick. Whenever Drew McIntyre and Sheamus get in the ring together, you know it's going to be violent, but the two friends took things to another level at Fastlane 2021. Meeting in a no-holds-barred match, the bout saw weapons galore, and arguably the most brutal moment came thanks to a kendo stick. Rather than use the weapon in the conventional way, Drew plunged the tip of the kendo stick into the eye socket of Sheamus, who sold the pain perfectly. Sheamus may not have lost an eye like Rey Mysterio, but it was still difficult to watch, something you'd expect to see in a hardcore death match, not as part of a B-tier pay-per-view of the PG era. Number 1. The Uso New Day Rap Battle. Arguably the best tag team feud of the PG era, the New Day and the Usos waged war in 2017, both in the ring and on the mic. The feud concluded with an instant classic Hell in a Cell match that the Usos won, but perhaps the most memorable part of the feud was a rap battle during the July 4th, 2017 SmackDown. Meeting in the ring, the Usos encouraged their opponents to keep things PG and said, "Just don't get all R-rated like your boy Xavier Woods." Fans in the arena popped loudly to the line, which referenced a sex tape Woods had filmed with Paige that had leaked online years prior. With the line being edited out of WWE's YouTube video of the segment, it appeared that the sex tape reference hadn't been approved by management, in one of the most shocking lines uttered on WWE TV in years.